Tonight we begin with a story that feels almost too scandalous to be true. A tale of ambition so sharp it could cut through dynasties. We are journeying back to the heart of the Roman Empire to uncover a forbidden history of power, intrigue, and a love so twisted it threatened to burn the whole world down. Forget the sanitized versions you learned in school. The truth of the Roman court was a whispering gallery of secrets, where a single rumor could be a death sentence. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Whispering Histories. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Perhaps turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Close your eyes. Feel the cool, polished marble beneath your feet. You are standing in a vast, echoing corridor on the Palatine Hill, the very nerve centre of the Roman world. The air is heavy with a strange perfume, a mixture of night-blooming jasmine, expensive cedarwood incense, and the faint, sweet, sour scent of spilled wine. Torches flicker in bronze sconces, their flames dancing and casting long, distorted shadows that seem to writhe like living things upon the frescoed walls. The paintings depict myths and legends, gods chasing nymphs, heroes slaying monsters. But here, in the palace of the emperor, the myths feel terrifyingly real, and the monsters walk among you. This is the home of Gaius Caesar, better known by his childhood nickname, Caligula, Little Boot, a name that sounds almost endearing, but it is never ever spoken aloud here. To do so would be a fatal error. Here, he is princeps, he is imperator, he is a living god. And you, like every other soul in this gilded cage, have learned to live by the rhythm of his unpredictable moods. You hear the sound of forced laughter from a chamber down the hall, a little too loud, a little too sharp. It's a sound you've come to recognize. It is the sound of fear trying to disguise itself as merriment. The courtiers drift past you, their silk togas and stolas whispering against the stone floors. Their faces are masks of pleasant indifference, but their eyes are constantly moving, assessing, watching for the slightest shift in the political weather. A senator, his brow slick with sweat despite the evening cool, offers a tight-lipped nod. A noblewoman, draped in pearls from Egypt, grips a small, intricately carved fan, her knuckles white. Everyone here is a performer, and the audience is an emperor who might reward a good performance with a governorship, or a poor one with an execution order signed before breakfast. One can only imagine the silent pleas and bargains being struck behind those carefully composed expressions. Then, you see her. She is standing near a fluted column, partially obscured by the fronds of a potted palm tree brought all the way from the banks of the Nile. She is young, perhaps not yet 25, but she carries herself with a stillness that makes her seem older. This is Agrippina, the emperor's sister. Her lineage is impeccable. She is the daughter of the beloved hero Germanicus and the granddaughter of the August Augustus himself. In a court of pretenders and flatterers, she is the genuine article, true imperial royalty. And it shows. She is beautiful, but it is not the soft, yielding beauty of the other court ladies. Her features are strong, her jawline firm, and her eyes. Her eyes are what hold your attention. They are dark and intelligent, and they miss nothing. While others watch the emperor with trembling apprehension, she watches everyone. She watches the senators. She watches the guards. She watches the servants pouring the wine. She is a student in a school of treachery, and you can sense that she is learning her lessons well. A hush falls over the nearby rooms. The laughter stops. Caligula is moving is he enters the atrium where you stand, and the collective breath of the room is held. He is not a physically imposing man, but he radiates an aura of absolute, terrifying power. He is speaking to his horse, Incitatus, about a jeweled collar he plans to gift him. This isn't a joke. He seems utterly serious, and the senators around him nod gravely, as if discussing a matter of state. Not exactly a modern board meeting, but the stakes here are infinitely higher. You watch Agrippina. She does not flinch. She does not look away. A flicker of something unreadable passes through her eyes. Is it contempt? Pity? Or is it calculation? She has seen this all before. She grew up with this brother. She knows the labyrinth of his mind better than anyone. Her survival, you realize, has depended on it. You recall the whispers about their other sister, Drusilla, the one Caligula loved beyond all reason. After she died, he had her deified, made into a goddess. The official story was one of fraternal devotion. But the darker rumours, the ones spoken in hushed tones in private gardens, hinted at a love that was anything but brotherly. Now that Drusilla is gone, that intense possessive focus has to land somewhere. Agrippina and her remaining sister, Julia Livilla, are all that is left. They are both a comfort and a target. Later, you find yourself at a banquet. The scene is one of staggering opulence. You are all reclining on couches in the traditional Roman style, a custom known as the triclinium. Your position in the room is everything. To be placed on the central couch with the emperor is the highest honor. To be relegated to the farthest corner is a public shaming. It's a complex social map. And tonight, Agrippina is seated in a place of honor near her brother. The table is laden with peacocks roasted in their feathers, with dormice baked in honey, with mountains of oysters and flagons of wine mixed with expensive spices. It was considered terribly improper in older, sterner Roman times to display such wealth. Old laws, the leges sumptuarii, had once tried to limit extravagance at private dinners. But those days are a distant memory. Here, excess is the point. It is a demonstration of power, a way for the emperor to show that the world and all its bounty belong to him. Caligula, growing bored, suddenly points a finger at an elderly senator across the room. He declares that the man's wife is far more graceful in her dancing than the man is in his tedious speeches, and he commands her to come to his private chambers. A silence, cold and heavy, falls upon the banquet. The senator's face drains of colour. His wife, a woman of 60, looks as though she might faint. It is a moment of pure, casual cruelty. But then Agrippina leans over and whispers something in her brother's ear. Her expression is calm, almost serene. You cannot hear the words, but you see their effect. Caligula's cruel smile falters. He looks at his sister, his gaze lingering for a moment too long. Then he laughs, a booming, artificial sound, and waves his hand dismissively. "It was a jest," he proclaims. "Can no one in this city take a jest?" The collective sigh of relief in the room is almost a gale-force wind. The senator looks at Agrippina with an expression of profound, tearful gratitude. And in that moment, you see it. You see her power. It is not the overt, brutal power of her brother. It is a different kind of power, subtle, persuasive, and perhaps even more effective. She did not challenge him. She did not defy him. She navigated him. She managed him. She saved a man's dignity and a woman's honour, not with a sword, but with a whisper. As the night wears on and the wine flows more freely, you drift near a shadowed alcove where two men in senatorial togas are speaking, their voices low. She has the ambition of her mother, one says, and the charm of her father, a dangerous combination. Dangerous for whom? The other murmurs back, glancing nervously towards the imperial couch. She keeps the wolf calm, for now. A beautiful woman who can calm a wolf, the first senator replies, a cynical smile playing on his lips, can also teach it to bite whomever she wishes. You retreat from the conversation, the words echoing in your mind. The banquet finally dissolves, the guests melting away into the Roman night, grateful to have survived. You see Agrippina one last time, walking down a long colonnaded hall, alone. The torchlight catches the deep red of her gown, making her look like a solitary flame moving through the darkness. Her face is a mask of perfect composure, giving nothing away. But you know, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones, that behind that mask, a mind is working, a plan is forming. She is not merely surviving this court, she is mastering it. What secrets must these marble walls have absorbed tonight? Waiting for the right moment to whisper them back to a future she is already beginning to build. The image of that solitary flame in the torchlit corridor begins to waver, the marble floor dissolving into something rough and uneven beneath your feet. The air, once thick with perfume and secrets, is now sharp and salty, scoured clean by a relentless wind. You are no longer on the Palatine Hill. The whispers of the court have been replaced by the roar of the sea, a constant thunderous reminder of your isolation. You are in exile. You are on Pandateria, one of the Pontian islands, a speck of volcanic rock thrusting out of the Tyrrhenian Sea. It is beautiful in a stark, unforgiving way. Jagged cliffs plunge into water of the most impossible blue, and the sun beats down with an intensity that bleaches the very colour from the sky. But it is a cage, a beautiful sun-drenched cage. The plot against Caligula, a tangled affair of ambitious senators, and, allegedly, his own sisters, has failed. Her co-conspirators were executed. Agrippina and her sister, Julia Livilla, were shown a sliver of mercy, banishment. You watch Agrippina as she stands on a cliff's edge, gazing east toward a mainland she cannot see. The fine silk she wore at the banquet is gone, replaced by a simple coarse-spun tunic, the kind worn by a fisherman's wife. Her intricate hairstyle is a memory, her dark hair now pulled back simply, whipped into strands by the wind. She has been stripped of everything, her wealth, her properties, her status. In Rome, she's been branded with infamia, a formal disgrace that erases a person from respectable society. She is legally and socially dead, a ghost haunting a remote rock. One can only imagine the sheer force of will it takes to face each new day in the face of such a complete and public ruin. In the opulent chaos of her brother's court, her life was a high-wire act. Here, it is a slow, grinding test of endurance. But she is not alone. You hear a child's laughter, a sound as bright and out of place as a songbird in a desert. A small boy with a shock of reddish-gold hair comes scrambling up the path, his hands full of colourful shells. He is barely 2 years old. This is Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus. This is her son, the boy the world will one day call Nero. He runs to his mother and tugs on her tunic, holding up his treasures for her approval. Agrippina turns from her silent vigil of the sea, and her face, which was a mask of hard resolve, softens instantly. The calculating princess of Rome disappears, and in her place is a mother. She kneels, her movements fluid and natural, and examines each shell as if it were a jewel from the imperial treasury. Just like that watchful gaze you saw her use to dissect the loyalties of the court, she now focuses that same intensity on the small, perfect world of her child. Her world has shrunk to this boy. In Rome, he was one of many heirs, a pawn in a vast and dangerous game. Here, on this island, he is everything. He is her purpose. He is her future. He is her revenge. You follow their days, which fall into a simple, repetitive rhythm dictated by the sun and the tides. There are no slaves to bring them chilled wine, no chefs to prepare exotic delicacies. You watch Agrippina learn to mend her son's clothes with clumsy stitches. To cook the fish a sympathetic guard might leave for them, to wash their tunics in a basin of brackish water. Each task is a humiliation, a reminder of all she has lost. Yet, you notice she performs them not with despair, but with a quiet, focused dignity. It is as if she has sealed away her old life in a vault in her mind, to be opened at a later date. Their small, whitewashed hut is bare, but she has made it a schoolroom. With a piece of charcoal, she teaches him his letters on a slab of slate. She doesn't just teach him to read, she teaches him the histories of their family, the Julian line, which stretches back to the goddess Venus. She draws maps of Rome in the dirt, pointing out the Forum, the Senate House, the palace where he was born. She tells him stories of his great-grandfather, the divine Augustus, who brought peace to a war-torn world. She tells him of his father, the hero Germanicus, beloved by the legions. She is not just educating a child, she is forging an emperor in the fires of her own disgrace. One evening, a fierce storm rolls in, the kind that makes the island feel as though it might be torn from its roots and swallowed by the sea. The wind shrieks and thunder cracks overhead. You see little Lucius, his face pale with fear, bury himself in his mother's side. She holds him tight, but you do not hear her offer soft, soothing reassurances. Instead, she begins to speak, her voice low and steady against the gale. She tells him a story of a prophecy. You wonder if she is creating it herself, or if it is a memory she is reshaping for his benefit. She speaks of a day, long before their exile, when an astrologer had looked at her son's chart and made a chilling prediction. He will become emperor, the stargazer had said, but he will kill his mother. It's a verifiable historical rumor, a tale that will follow them for the rest of their lives. In her telling of it now, in this storm-tossed hut, she adds her own defiant conclusion. She whispers into her son's ear, as much for herself as for him, the words that legend will always attribute to her. Let him kill me, so long as he rules. A light smile of the darkest irony touches your thoughts. This is her pact with destiny. She is willing to pay any price, even the ultimate one, to reclaim what was taken from them. She will not be a victim of fate. She will be its architect. News from Rome is their rarest and most precious commodity. It arrives with the supply ships, sparse and often contradictory. You see the hunger in Agrippina's eyes as she questions the sailors. Is her brother still secure? Are there whispers of dissent? Has anyone spoken her name? Most of them just shrug, indifferent to the fate of a disgraced noblewoman. But every scrap of information is a piece of a puzzle she is constantly assembling in her mind. She is playing the game from 1,000 miles away, with no pieces and no board, using only her formidable intellect and an unyielding will. Then, one day, a ship brings a different kind of news. A guard, perhaps taking pity on her, or perhaps paid by allies she still has in Rome, passes her a sealed tablet. You watch as she breaks the wax seal, her hands perfectly steady. Her eyes scan the message carved into the wood. Her expression does not change, but you feel a shift in the very air around her. The news is monumental. The unthinkable has happened. Her brother, the god, The monster, Emperor Caligula, is dead, assassinated by his own Praetorian guard. She stands for a long time, the wooden tablet clutched in her hand, staring out at the waves. The wind whips her hair across her face, but she doesn't seem to notice. The prison gates have not yet opened, but the jailer is dead. A new emperor now sits on the throne, her uncle, Claudius. A man long dismissed as a fool, a bookish recluse. But he is family. And in the merciless world of Roman politics, family is a connection that can be a lifeline or a weapon. In the emptiness of the island, she found something more valuable than all the gold in Rome, a reason to endure. As the sun sets, casting a path of liquid fire across the water towards the mainland, you see not a prisoner, but a player waiting for her summons back to the game. Her son has fallen asleep in her lap, his red hair a splash of defiant colour against the twilight. Her exile is not over, but you know with absolute certainty that it will be. She has survived. And for a woman like Agrippina, survival is just the first step toward triumph. The path of liquid fire on the water at sunset dissolves into the churning, foamy wake of a ship. The salt spray feels different now, no longer a symbol of imprisonment, but of passage. You are on a vessel slicing through the waves toward Italy, toward home. You stand on the deck beside Agrippina, who watches the hazy coastline of Campania grow steadily clearer on the horizon. Her son, Lucius, now a boy of about 4, grips her hand, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder at the sheer size of the world unfolding before him. For him, this is the beginning of everything. For his mother, it is the beginning of everything again. Their return to Rome is not the grand spectacle you might imagine. There are no cheering crowds, no triumphal arches. The pardon from her uncle, the new Emperor Claudius, is a quiet act of familial clemency, not a public vindication. You watch her navigate their re-entry into the city with a breathtaking caution. She reclaims a modest version of her former life, her movements a study in discretion. The woman who survived Caligula's court knows that a sudden move can attract predators. And the court of Claudius, you soon learn, has predators of its own. This Rome is different. Caligula's reign was a fever dream of terror and excess. Claudius's court is a swamp of bureaucratic intrigue. The emperor himself is an aging scholar, more comfortable with his scrolls and histories than with the burdens of power. As a result, that power is wielded by a trio of ambitious and fantastically wealthy imperial freedmen, his secretaries, Pallas, Narcissus, and Callistus. They are the true gatekeepers of the palace. And then there is the empress, Claudius's young wife, Valeria Messalina. If Agrippina is a creature of calculated stillness, Messalina is one of reckless impulse. She is beautiful, fertile, having given Claudius 2 children, Britannicus and Octavia, and notoriously unfaithful. You see immediately how she views Agrippina, not as family, but as a rival. A descendant of the divine Augustus, with a direct link to the beloved Germanicus, Agrippina possesses a lineage that Messalina, for all her power, lacks. You witness the subtle battles fought in passing glances and polite greetings that are colder than a winter wind off the Alps. Rumours begin to circulate, as they always do. Whispers from the professional informers, the delatores, who thrive on slander and make their fortunes from the downfall of others. They murmur that Agrippina's beauty is a threat, that her ambition has not been dimmed by exile. It's a dangerous time. You watch Agrippina counter these threats with impeccable behaviour. She is the model of a respectable Roman widow, devoted to her son, showing nothing but deference to the emperor and his wife. She is a picture of piety and modesty, the same iron self-control you saw her use to survive her brother. she now deploys to become utterly, unimpeachably boring. It is a brilliant and necessary performance. And then Messalina, in her arrogance, makes a fatal mistake. While Claudius is away from the city, officiating a ceremony at the port of Ostia, she participates in a public wedding ceremony with her lover, the handsome senator Gaius Silius. It is an act of such breathtaking audacity that when the news reaches the court, no one can quite believe it. You are there as the freedman Narcissus, seeing his chance to destroy a rival, races to Ostia to inform the emperor. The fallout is swift and brutal. Claudius, a man perpetually insecure in his power, is terrified of a coup. Silius and his co-conspirators are executed without delay. Messalina is cornered in the gardens of Lucullus, and after a moment of panicked indecision from the emperor, the order is given. The Empress of Rome is put to the sword. A vacuum of power opens at the very heart of the empire. The position of empress is vacant. Claudius, heartbroken and terrified, vows he will never marry again. But his freedmen know better. An unmarried emperor is a vulnerable emperor. Immediately the factions begin to form. Narcissus proposes a former wife of Claudius. Callistus pushes another candidate. And then Pallas, the comptroller, the cleverest of them all, plays his MasterCard. Agrippina. You can almost feel the collective shock that ripples through the palace's inner circle when her name is first seriously proposed. The objection is not one of character or status. It is one of blood. She is his niece, the daughter of his brother. For an uncle to marry his niece was nefas, an impiety, a violation of Roman law and ancestral custom. It was, in a word, incest. A light smile touches your thoughts as you realize the sheer, beautiful audacity of her plan. She does not merely want to influence the emperor. She wants to bind herself to him, to merge her bloodline with his, making her position unassailable. Now, you see the true Agrippina, the one who was forged on Pandateria, re-emerge. The quiet, modest widow vanishes. In her place is a political strategist of the highest order. This is not a romance, it is a campaign. You watch her with Claudius. He is lonely, aging, and deeply shaken. She does not approach him with the flirtatious wiles of a younger woman. Instead, she offers him something far more potent: comfort, stability, and family. She sits with him, discussing their shared lineage. She reminds him, subtly, that as the daughter of the heroic Germanicus, she brings with her the love of the people and the loyalty of the legions. She is not some stranger. She is blood of his blood. In a court filled with schemers, she presents the union as the safest possible choice. Her champion, Pallas, works tirelessly behind the scenes, persuading, bribing, and cajoling. The final move is a piece of pure political theatre. You are present in the Senate when a prominent senator named Lucius Vitellius, a man firmly in Agrippina's camp, rises to speak. He does not frame the issue as a matter of the emperor's personal desire. Instead, he argues with great passion that this marriage is a matter of state security. It will unite the two main branches of the Julio-Claudian family. It will provide a mature, proven, and noble empress for Rome. It will secure the dynasty. He concludes by imploring the other senators to compel the emperor to put aside his personal feelings and marry his niece for the good of the Republic. It is a masterful stroke, not a request for permission, but a demand masquerading as a plea. The Senate, ever sensitive to the political winds, dutifully agrees. A special law is passed, and the ancient prohibition is swept aside. You are in her domus when the news arrives. There is no triumphant laughter, no overt celebration. You see only a quiet nod, a deep, slow exhale. It is the look of a general whose long and difficult siege has finally ended in victory. The woman who once scavenged for shells on a barren beach will now wear the jewels of an empress. The wedding itself is a subdued affair, held quickly and without excessive pomp. The shadow of Messalina's fate and the scandalous nature of the union demand a certain gravity. You watch her stand beside Claudius, her uncle, now her husband. She is dressed in the traditional robes of a Roman bride, her face serene. But her eyes, as always, tell a different story. In them, you see the reflection of the sea off the cliffs of Pandateria, the memory of her son drawing maps in the dirt, and the unyielding fire of a promise she made to herself in the dark. In Rome, she knew, love was a currency, but legacy was the only true throne. She has just married the man who sits upon it. The quiet solemnity of the wedding ceremony gives way to the grand theatre of public life. You are no longer in a private room, but in the bustling, sunlit expanse of the Roman Forum. As Agrippina makes her first appearances as the wife of the emperor, you notice an immediate and deliberate shift in the atmosphere of the court. The giddy, dangerous recklessness of Messalina's era is gone, replaced by a new, sober dignity. Agrippina, the empress, is a vision of Roman virtue. Her gowns are rich but modest, her jewellery elegant but never ostentatious. She is always at her husband's side, her expression one of serene devotion. It is a carefully crafted image of stability, designed to reassure a Senate and a populace weary of scandal. But behind this facade of the dutiful Roman wife, a different kind of work is being done, with a speed and precision that is breathtaking to behold. You watch as she begins to construct her own empire within the empire. The key to this is a cornerstone of Roman society, the relationship between a patron and their clients. A powerful patron, a patronus or patrona, provided legal, financial, and political aid to a vast network of followers, their clients, who in turn owed them loyalty, votes, and their public support. It was the invisible architecture of Roman power. While many imperial wives had influence, Agrippina set about building a client network that would rival the emperor's own. You observe her morning routine. The doors to her wing of the palace are opened at dawn, and a stream of visitors flows in. Senators hoping to secure a favourable appointment, knights seeking a military commission, architects with plans for a new aqueduct, poets seeking a stipend. She receives them all, listening patiently, her gaze sharp and intelligent. A quiet word from her to the right person could make a career. A subtle frown could end one. This daily reception, this salutatio, becomes one of the most important events in Rome. Forget sending a carefully worded email. Securing a moment of the empress's time was the only true way to get things done. Her power is not just felt, it is seen. The ultimate public declaration of her status comes when the Senate, at the quiet suggestion of her allies, bestows upon her a title of unprecedented honour. You are standing in the forum when the proclamation is read aloud, the herald's voice echoing off the ancient temples. Agrippina is to be named Augusta. A quiet ripple of astonishment passes through the crowd. The revered Livia, wife of the first Emperor Augustus, had only been granted that title in his will as a posthumous honour. For Agrippina to receive it while her husband, the emperor, was still alive and ruling was a statement of staggering significance. It elevated her from the emperor's wife to his divine partner. She was no longer just standing beside the throne. In many ways, she was now on it, The symbols of this new authority are everywhere. You see the money changers handling new coins, fresh from the mint. On them, you see her portrait, her hair in a severe classic style, sometimes appearing on the reverse of Claudius's coin, sometimes even facing him on the same side, as an equal. In the far-off province of Germania, her birthplace is refounded as a Roman colony, a supreme honour. It is given her name, Colonia Claudia Ara Agrippinensium. You know it today as the city of Cologne. Imagine a modern First Lady having a major city named after her. It gives you a sense of the scale of her prominence. When she travels through the streets of Rome, it is in a carpentum, a magnificent ceremonial carriage, a right once reserved for the most sacred priestesses. She has become a living icon. Of course, power is not just accumulated, it must be secured, and you witness the cold, clinical efficiency with which Agrippina neutralizes any perceived threats. The court of Claudius is a dangerous place, and she knows that to hesitate is to invite destruction. Lollia Paulina, a wealthy noblewoman who had been considered a potential wife for Claudius after Messalina's fall, is accused of consulting astrologers, a crime often interpreted as treasonous black magic. Her property is confiscated, she is sent into exile, and there she is forced to take her own life. You never see the order, you never hear the command, but you feel Agrippina's will moving silently behind the scenes, like a change in the atmospheric pressure before a storm. She is eliminating any alternative to her own power, ensuring that no rival faction can ever form around another woman. While she fortifies her own position, her ultimate focus remains on her son. You watch as she engineers the single most important step for his future. The boy known as Lucius is formally adopted by the Emperor Claudius. His name is scrubbed from the ledgers of history, and he is reborn as Nero Claudius Caesar. He is now, officially, the emperor's son, a prince of the imperial house. With his status secured, she turns to his education. She dismisses his existing tutors, men loyal to the memory of Messalina and her son, Britannicus. In their place, she installs a man of her own choosing. In a move of political genius, she persuades Claudius to recall from exile a brilliant philosopher named Lucius Annaeus Seneca. Seneca is a famous intellectual, a master of Stoic philosophy, and he owes his entire career, his wealth, his very return to Rome, to Agrippina. He becomes Nero's tutor, tasked with moulding the boy's mind. It is a masterful choice, giving her son a tutor of impeccable intellectual credentials, while ensuring that his primary loyalty will be to his benefactor, the Augusta. You now see her in all her glory at public functions, seated on a dais beside her husband as he presides over judicial hearings or receives foreign embassies. While Claudius, now in his late 50s, often seems tired or distracted, stammering or losing his train of thought, Agrippina is a pillar of regal focus. Her presence lends weight and gravity to the proceedings. She is his partner, his advisor, his co-ruler in all but name. What must the older senators think? Those who remember her as a disgraced girl, banished to a rock. Now she sits in judgment over them. Power, she seemed to understand, was not a crown to be worn, but a web to be woven, thread by invisible thread. And as you watch her, a serene and untouchable figure at the center of Roman authority, you know that she has woven a masterpiece. The web of power you have watched Agrippina weave is now complete, its threads stretching into every corner of the Senate, the military, and the imperial household. It is a structure of immense strength and beautiful complexity, and now you will see its true purpose. It was not woven for her own sake, not really. It is a net, designed from the beginning to catch the greatest prize of all, the throne of Rome for her son, Nero. The game of succession begins not with a proclamation, but with 1,000 silent daily gestures within the palace walls. You see the two princes, the two boys at the heart of this struggle, often together in the manicured gardens or the long echoing halls. There is Nero, her son, now a teenager, brimming with a charm that has been carefully cultivated by his mother and his tutor, Seneca. He is handsome, talented, and basking in the brilliant sunshine of his mother's favour. And then there is Britannicus. He is younger by a few years, the true-born son of the Emperor Claudius, a direct descendant of the man who rules the world. Yet, he walks under a perpetual cloud. He is the son of the disgraced Messalina, a stain that Agrippina never allows the court to forget. You watch the subtle, relentless campaign to elevate one boy and diminish the other. It is a masterclass in psychological warfare. When the two appear in public, Nero is always dressed in the uniform of a triumphant general, while Britannicus wears a simple boy's toga. In the chariot races for young nobles, Nero is given the finest horses from the imperial stables. At military parades, it is Nero who rides beside the emperor, a miniature commander, while Britannicus is lost in the crowd of other aristocratic youths. One can only wonder if the boys themselves understood they were not brothers, but pieces in a game whose rules they were not allowed to read. Agrippina's methods are ruthlessly efficient. She understands that to control a prince, you must first control his world. You observe as, one by one, the loyal servants and tutors who have cared for Britannicus since his birth are dismissed. One is accused of theft, another of disloyalty. They are replaced by men who owe their positions and their allegiance entirely to the Augusta. Suddenly, the boy prince is surrounded. Every face he sees, from the man who teaches him Greek grammar to the guard outside his door, is an agent of his stepmother. He is a prisoner in his own home, his isolation becoming more profound with each passing day. The most public display of this shifting tide comes on the day Nero is to assume the toga virilis, the toga of manhood. This ancient Roman ceremony was a pivotal moment in a young man's life, a formal entry into public and political society, typically happening around the age of 14. Agrippina, however, persuades a pliable Claudius to allow Nero to celebrate the rite early, and so you find yourself in the crowd at the forum, watching as Nero, at just 13 years of age, is escorted by the consuls and the city's elite. He sheds the purple-bordered toga of boyhood and dons the pure white toga of a Roman citizen. In the same decree, the Senate grants him proconsular authority outside the city walls and adds his name to the public prayers for the state, alongside the emperor. Britannicus, still a child in his youthful robes, is made to watch the entire spectacle. It is a public and deeply humiliating lesson for all of Rome to see. This is your future emperor, the ceremony screams. The other one is a child, an afterthought. But the old loyalties to the true-born son have not vanished completely. They have merely gone underground. You witness a moment of breathtaking tension during the festival of Saturnalia, a winter holiday where social norms were briefly relaxed. In a game of chance among the young nobles, Nero is chosen as the mock king for the night, allowed to issue harmless commands to his friends. With a flash of youthful cruelty, he turns to his stepbrother and commands him to sing for the assembled company, expecting the shy boy to be embarrassed. A hush falls over the room, but Britannicus does not stammer or refuse. Instead, he stands and sings a song. The melody is mournful and clear, and the words speak of a royal child cast out from his home and his birthright. It is a stunningly direct and poignant protest. For a moment, the courtly masks slip. You see looks of genuine pity and sympathy on the faces of many older senators. Claudius himself seems moved. It is a small act of defiance, but it accomplishes two things. It reminds everyone of the injustice being done, and more importantly for Agrippina, it reveals, in their unguarded expressions, exactly who in the court still harbours loyalty to the son of Messalina. It was a miscalculation on Nero's part, but a windfall of intelligence for his mother. The final stone in the arch of Nero's ascendancy is a marriage. It is Agrippina's most devastatingly brilliant move. She orchestrates the betrothal of Nero to Octavia, Claudius's daughter and Britannicus's own sister. You are present for the formal announcement, a state affair of immense consequence. The move is strategically perfect. It ties Nero not just by adoption, but by marriage into the immediate family of the emperor. He is now son and son-in-law. It solidifies his position and completely isolates Britannicus, severing even the bond of sibling loyalty with this new political alliance. With all the pieces in place, Nero's future seems assured. He is the celebrated heir, his path to the throne paved and polished by his mother. But as Nero's star rises, you begin to notice a change in the old emperor. Perhaps the song of his son at Saturnalia planted a seed of doubt. Perhaps, in his quieter moments, his conscience and his paternal love have begun to stir. You overhear whispers among the palace staff. The emperor has been seen embracing Britannicus warmly when he thought no one was watching. He has been heard muttering to his closest advisors, "To wound and then to heal," a cryptic phrase that many interpret as a desire to restore his own son to his rightful place. A new urgency hangs in the air. Agrippina's perfect plan, executed over years of patient, meticulous work, suddenly feels fragile. Her husband, the source of all her power, is having second thoughts. The control she has established over him is beginning to fray. She has successfully checkmated every opponent in the court, but now the king himself is threatening to knock over the board. Her window of opportunity, once so wide, may be closing. The air in the palace has changed. That sense of urgency you felt, that fear in Agrippina that her carefully constructed world might be undone by a surge of fatherly affection from her husband, now hangs thick and heavy in every room. It is a quiet, suffocating tension, the kind that precedes a lightning strike. You watch the Emperor Claudius, and it is clear his heart is softening towards his own son. He speaks to Britannicus more often. His hand rests on the boy's shoulder with a new tenderness. He has been heard to say that it is time the Roman people saw a true Caesar. Every one of these gestures is a grain of sand running out of the hourglass of Agrippina's grand design. You are a silent observer at what will be the last supper of the emperor. The family is gathered in a private dining room, reclining on couches draped in Tyrian purple. The mood is unnervingly pleasant. Claudius is in good spirits, laughing and joking with both Nero and Britannicus. Agrippina sits like a marble statue of a goddess, a serene smile fixed on her face, but her eyes never stop moving, never stop watching. She bestows a look of maternal pride on Nero, a look of polite warmth on Britannicus. It is a performance of such perfection, it is almost terrifying. Course after course is brought in on heavy silver platters. Then comes a special dish, reserved for the emperor himself. A plate of large succulent mushrooms, a delicacy for which Claudius is known to have a particular fondness. They have been prepared just the way he likes them. He gestures for the platter, helps himself to a generous portion, and eats them with obvious relish. You watch the scene unfold, a moment of mundane domesticity at the heart of absolute power. The emperor eats his favorite meal. His wife watches him. Nothing could be more normal, and nothing could be more chilling. For a few hours, the tense peace holds. The family retires for the night. But then, in the deep, silent hours past midnight, the palace awakens with a furtive energy. You hear the slap of sandals on marble floors, the sound of doors opening and closing. Torches move quickly down corridors that should be dark. Whispers echo and then are swiftly hushed. The emperor is unwell. The official word, released to the handful of courtiers awake to hear it, is that he has a case of indigestion from his rich meal. It is plausible. Claudius is a known glutton. But you see the faces of the physicians as they hurry to the imperial bedchamber, and their expressions are not those of men treating a simple stomachache. They are grim, frightened. The palace is quietly sealed. The gates are barred. No one is to enter. No one is to leave. Agrippina has taken complete control. And now the whispers begin. In the kitchens, in the guard posts, in the shadowed porticos, the story begins to piece itself together, passed from person to person in hushed, fearful tones. It starts with the mushrooms. They were a gift to the emperor from his loving wife. But a name is breathed into the story. A name that makes the blood run cold. Augusta. A woman whose name is a byword for poison. She is a grim artist, a specialist whose skills were sought by those who needed a powerful enemy to simply disappear. Not exactly the kind of caterer one finds in the Yellow Pages. The rumour is that Agrippina had found a use for her talents, securing her from a prison cell for this one special task. The whispers become more detailed as the night wears on. The poison, they say, was a slow-acting one, designed to mimic a natural illness. But Claudius's constitution, fortified by years of excess, was fighting it. He was in agony, but he was not dying. You can almost feel the panic of that moment, the fear that the plot would be discovered. And then, the story takes its final, horrifying turn. The emperor's own physician, a Greek named Gaius Statinius Xenophon, was summoned. Under the guise of helping the emperor clear his stomach, a common enough practice, he was said to have used a feather to induce vomiting. You can picture it, a soft, elegant feather, perhaps from a peacock, meant to bring relief. But the whisper, the terrible, insistent whisper, says this feather was different. Its tip had been dipped in a second, fast-acting poison, delivered directly to the emperor's throat under the pretense of medical care. It is a story of almost unimaginable treachery. You do not see any of this. You are outside the locked doors of the imperial suite. You only hear the stories as they take root and grow in the fertile soil of the palace's fear. Throughout the next day, an eerie calm descends. Agrippina issues bulletins. The emperor is weak, but his fever has subsided. He is resting. She is by his side, a model of wifely devotion. But you know this is a lie. This is a waiting game. She is not nursing an invalid. She is managing a death. She is buying time. Time for what? Time for her most crucial ally, the stern, one-eyed commander of the Praetorian Guard, Sextus Afranius Burrus, to do his work. Agrippina had him appointed to this position for exactly this reason. He is her man. You can imagine him moving through the Praetorian barracks, speaking to the centurions, reminding them of the generous donative they have been promised upon Nero's accession, reminding them that Nero is the son of the beloved Germanicus's daughter. He is securing the swords that will legitimize the transition. Finally, at noon on October the 13th, a time carefully chosen by astrologers as the most favorable for a new beginning, the heavy palace gates swing open. A figure emerges, dressed in the deep mourning robes of a widow. It is Agrippina. Her face is a mask of controlled, dignified grief. By her hand is her son, Nero, his expression a mixture of teenage confusion and gravity. She raises a hand, and in a clear, steady voice, she announces that her beloved husband, the Emperor Claudius, has shed his mortal form and has been welcomed into the pantheon of the gods. For a moment, there is a stunned silence. Then, before anyone can think to ask about Britannicus, who is safely locked away in his chambers, weeping for a father he cannot mourn in public, Burrus gives a signal. A cohort of Praetorian guardsmen surges forward, lifts Nero onto their shoulders, and hails him as Imperator. The kingmakers of Rome have made their choice. Agrippina stands back, watching the procession carry her son off towards the Praetorian camp, where he will be formally acclaimed. The whispers about the mushrooms and the feather have not gone away. In fact, in the vacuum of the emperor's death, they seem to shout. But they are still only whispers. History is written by the victors, but its first, most honest draft is often whispered by the terrified. And tonight, as a new reign begins, the palace is a library of terrified whispers. You watch as the Praetorian Guard, a river of steel and muscle, carries the newly proclaimed Emperor Nero away towards their fortified camp. The shouts of Imperator fade into the distance. Agrippina remains standing at the palace gates, a solitary figure in black. The wind catches the edge of her mourning veil. She does not watch her son until he is out of sight. She simply stands for a moment in the sudden quiet, a fulcrum upon which the entire world has just turned. Then she pivots with a slow, deliberate grace and walks back into the palace. The moment she crosses the threshold, the atmosphere shifts. This is no longer the house of her husband, the Emperor Claudius. It is hers. The whispers you heard in the corridors of mushrooms and poison and feathers have not vanished, but they have been driven deep underground. Fear is a powerful silencer. In the first hours of the new reign, it is Agrippina's authority that is absolute. While her 17-year-old son is being formally acclaimed by the soldiers and the Senate, she is the one moving the pieces on the board. You see her issuing orders to the palace staff, summoning commanders, and dispatching messages. She is a whirlwind of calm, decisive energy. Her long, patient game is over, and she is now claiming her winnings. Her first public acts are strokes of political genius, designed to cement her son's legitimacy and sanitize the questionable nature of his accession. You are in the Curia, the Senate House, when the motion is brought forward. The late Emperor Claudius, her husband, her uncle, the man she is rumored to have murdered, is to be declared a god. He is to have his own temple, his own priesthood. You watch as the senators, eager to curry favor with the new regime, vote unanimously in favor. It is a masterful move. She presents herself as the grieving, pious widow, honoring her husband's memory. But more importantly, by making Claudius divine, she makes his official acts sacred. And his most important recent act was adopting Nero as his son and heir. To question Nero's right to rule would now be an act of blasphemy. Next comes the public reading of the divine Claudius's will. It is a moment of high theatre. The scroll is unsealed before the assembly. What if the old man had found a way to write a final, secret testament, restoring his own son's inheritance? The air is thick with anticipation, but as the words are read, a collective, unspoken sigh of relief comes from Agrippina's faction. The will confirms everything. Nero is the principal heir to his fortune and his titles. Britannicus is mentioned, but only as a ward to be placed under the care and protection of his elder stepbrother. It is the final legal nail in the coffin of the boy's ambitions. Nero himself makes his debut before the Senate. He is young, handsome, and nervous, but he has been coached by the finest minds in Rome, his mother and his tutor, Seneca. His speech is a triumph. He promises a new era of governance, a golden age. He vows to respect the Senate's authority, to end the secret trials and political corruption that had marked Claudius's later years. He is, in effect, promising to be the opposite of the emperor he has just succeeded, a subtle but effective way of distancing his new reign from the whispers surrounding its beginning. You can almost see Agrippina's influence, her words flowing from her son's mouth. The most potent symbol of her new status, however, comes not in a public speech, but in a private military custom. You are a presence in the palace that first night. The centurion commanding the Praetorian Guard on duty comes to the new emperor to ask for the watchword, the secret password for the night. It is a tradition that marks the transfer of supreme military command. The young Nero, for a moment, seems at a loss. He looks not to his advisors, not to his guards, but to his mother. Agrippina gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Nero turns back to the soldier and gives him the password. Optima Mater, the best of mothers. It is a stunning, unprecedented declaration. The key to the security of the emperor, the very password that protects the heart of the Roman Empire, is a tribute to her. There could be no clearer sign of who truly holds the power. In the months that follow, her rule is almost absolute. You see her receiving ambassadors from Armenia, who plead their case not just to Nero, but to her. She sits on a raised dais beside her son, listening, questioning, her input as vital as his. At one public event, she even attempts to mount the tribunal with Nero to preside over a trial, a move so radical, so contrary to all Roman tradition, that the ever-diplomatic Seneca has to create a diversion to prevent it. He suggests Nero descend to meet his mother, preserving her dignity while preventing a public scandal. It is a gentle hint that there are some lines even she cannot cross. But there are few. Her portrait now appears on the imperial coinage, not as a junior partner, but as an equal. She is depicted as Ceres, the goddess of the harvest, the nurturer of the state. She has systematically purged the powerful freedmen of Claudius's court who were not loyal to her. Narcissus, the one who had informed Claudius of Messalina's treason, is driven to suicide within weeks. She is clearing the board of all opposing pieces. For a time, it seems to work for everyone. The government of the empire runs with smooth efficiency under the triumvirate of Agrippina, Seneca, and the Praetorian prefect Burrus. Nero, free from the burdens of administration, which he detests, is able to indulge his passions for music, poetry, and chariot racing. The people adore their youthful, charismatic emperor. And what of Britannicus? You see him occasionally, a pale, silent boy who haunts the palace halls, like a ghost at a feast. He is treated well, but he is watched constantly. He is a living reminder of a crime that no one dares to name, a loose thread she has yet to deal with. Still, she has achieved it all. The disgraced exile from Pandateria is now the most powerful woman the world has ever known. She rules Rome through a son who is, for now, completely devoted to her. For a brief, golden moment, it seems she had achieved the impossible, a throne without a title, an empire without a crown. But such moments, in the treacherous climate of Rome, were never destined to last. That brief, golden moment of absolute power, you now realize, was just that, a moment. For as stable as the empire appears on the outside, a new and unpredictable force is rising within the palace walls. Nero's own heart. He is no longer a boy to be moulded, but a young man of 17, then 18, with a young man's passions. And his affections have settled on someone utterly outside of his mother's control. Her name is Claudia Acti. She is a former slave, a freedwoman from Asia Minor, and she is everything Agrippina is not: gentle, unassuming, and seemingly without any political ambition of her own. You see the way Nero looks at Acta with a genuine warmth and tenderness that is entirely different from the coach devotion he shows his mother. For the first time, he has a secret, a loyalty that is his alone. And you witness how Agrippina reacts to this development. It is not with the weary resignation of a mother seeing her son grow up. It is with the cold fury of a monarch sensing a rival. She scolds Nero, reminding him that he is the emperor and that to dally with a former slave is beneath his dignity. She reminds him that he is married to the noble Octavia. But her objections, you sense, have nothing to do with class or propriety. She is a queen who sees her king's attention wandering, and she will not tolerate it. In response to this first flicker of his independence, her own affection for him intensifies, becoming something possessive, almost suffocating. You observe them in the private wings of the palace, and the comfortable maternal air you saw before has been replaced by something charged and deeply uncomfortable. Her hands linger on his shoulders when she adjusts his toga. She praises his physical form, his musical talents, his poetic voice with a breathless admiration that feels more like that of an ardent admirer than a proud mother. When he enters a room, her eyes fix on him, following his every move with a burning intensity that seems to drain the very air from the space. And so, the whispers begin again. Not the whispers of poisoned mushrooms, which were about an event, a death. These are different. They are about a state of being, about the very nature of the relationship between mother and son. You hear them in the hushed corners of the imperial library, behind the flutter of a noblewoman's fan, in the barracks of the Praetorian Guard after the wine has been flowing. The words are shocking, spoken in low, incredulous tones. They speak of an unnatural affection, a monstrous closeness. They revive the old shadowy rumours about her and her brother, Caligula, suggesting a dark pattern in the bloodline. This gossip is more than just salacious talk. It is a political weapon. For years, Agrippina has carefully built her public identity around the Roman ideal of pudicitia, the virtue of modesty, chastity, and dignity. She is the optima mater, the best of mothers, a figure of almost divine maternal piety. These rumours of incest are a direct and devastating assault on that image. You realise her enemies, and perhaps even her allies, Seneca and Burrus, who are growing weary of her absolute dominance, understand that this is her greatest vulnerability. They cannot attack her for being powerful, so they attack her for her method of keeping that power. It's a cynical but brilliant strategy. You are a silent presence during a private banquet, one evening when the tension is particularly high. Nero has been spending more and more time with Acte, ignoring his mother's thinly veiled commands to end the affair. Agrippina, you notice, has drunk more wine than usual. She is dressed in a gown of shimmering sea-green silk that clings to her form. After the meal, she approaches her son. Her movements are slow, deliberate, her eyes locked on his. The few advisors in the room fall silent. The air crackles with a strange energy. The historian Tacitus would later write of this moment, claiming she was offering herself to her son. a desperate last-ditch effort to ensnare his affections and prove that she could offer him more than any rival. You, as the observer, cannot know her mind. You only see what the others see. A mother, beautiful and powerful, presenting herself to her son with a gaze that seems to hold everything but maternal love. Nero looks back, his expression a storm of confusion, shock, and perhaps a flicker of alarm. It is Seneca who breaks the spell. He calmly murmurs a question to Nero about Acte, turning his attention, saving him from the necessity of a response. The moment is broken, but the image is burned into the memory of everyone who witnessed it. Whether it was a calculated attempt at seduction or a tragically misjudged display of affection, the effect is the same. The rumour now has a scene to attach itself to. The story spreads through the city like a fever. It almost doesn't matter if it is true. The perception becomes the reality. You hear the light, cruel jokes people now make about the optima mater. The respect she once commanded is now tainted with suspicion and a kind of fascinated horror. You see the change in Nero. Her touch now makes him flinch. Her praise seems to suffocate him. The bond that was the source of his power has become a mark of shame. He begins to actively avoid her, ensuring Seneca or Burrus are always present when they must meet. He is an emperor, the master of the world, but he is acting like a schoolboy trying to escape the eye of a domineering parent. The power dynamic has irrevocably shifted. The more she clings, the more he pulls away. The golden bond between mother and son has been poisoned. Agrippina, in her all-consuming desire to remain the sole influence in her son's life, has overplayed her hand. She has fought for his throne, killed for it, and ruled through it. Now, faced with the one rival she cannot simply banish or execute, her son's own heart, she may have resorted to a strategy so dark it has begun to consume her. In the suffocating closeness of the palace, where does a mother's love end and a ruler's ambition begin? For those who watched them, the line had become terrifyingly blurred. The blurred line between a mother's love and a ruler's ambition has now snapped. The whispers and the suffocating tension you felt in the palace corridors have erupted into open warfare. The golden facade of the golden age of Nero's early reign is beginning to crack, revealing the bitter power struggle beneath. And the hammer that will shatter it has a name: Poppaea Sabina. Nero has tired of his gentle freedwoman, Acte. His gaze has now fallen upon Poppaea. And if Acte was a quiet stream, Poppaea is a tidal wave. You see her at court, and she is magnificent. She is widely considered the most beautiful woman in Rome, but it is her mind that is her most formidable quality. She is witty, intelligent, and fiercely ambitious, a mirror of Agrippina herself in her youth. Poppaea is married, but she makes it clear she intends to be empress, and she sees one, and only one, obstacle in her path. You overhear her conversations with Nero, her voice a seductive whisper in his ear. She mocks him, gently at first, then with a sharper edge. Is he truly the emperor, she asks, or is he just a boy who still needs his mother's permission to rule? Why must he put up with her arrogance? Why is Pallas, his mother's creature, still in charge of the empire's treasury? She is not just a lover, she is a political strategist, stoking the fires of Nero's resentment, hardening his heart against the woman who gave him the world. The first great crack in the facade appears on the day Nero dismisses Pallas. You are in the throne room when it happens. Pallas, the powerful freedman who had been the architect of Agrippina's return from exile and her marriage to Claudius, the man who controlled the finances of the entire empire, is publicly stripped of his office. It is a stunning, direct assault on Agrippina's authority. You see her face, white with rage. She confronts Nero later, her voice trembling with fury. But this is not the boy she could once control with a sharp word or a disappointed look. This is the emperor, flanked by his advisors Seneca and Burrus, and fueled by the taunts of his new love. He does not back down. Feeling her power slipping through her fingers like sand, Agrippina makes her most fateful error. In a moment of pure desperation, she plays her final terrifying card. She threatens her son. You are a witness to the furious argument. She screams at him that she regrets everything, that she should have protected the true-born son of Claudius. She vows to go to the Praetorian camp herself, with Britannicus at her side, and let the soldiers choose between the usurper and the rightful heir. It is the political equivalent of threatening nuclear war. The threat has the opposite of its intended effect. It does not make Nero compliant, it makes him terrified. And a terrified Nero, you are about to learn, is the most dangerous creature in Rome. A few weeks later, another banquet is held in the palace. The young Britannicus, now 14 years old, is present, as always. A cup is brought to him to be tasted for poison, a standard precaution. It is too hot, and he asks for it to be cooled with water. The cold water is added. He takes a single sip, and immediately his body convinces. He gasps for breath, and within moments, he slumps lifeless on the floor. A horrified silence descends on the room. Some guests leap up in panic. Others, more politically astute, freeze in place, their eyes fixed on Nero. The official explanation is given immediately. It was an epileptic fit, an ailment the boy had supposedly suffered from since childhood. But you see Agrippina's face. It is a mask of genuine shock and abject horror. She used the boy as a pawn in her game of threats, but she never intended this. In that moment, she understands two things with chilling clarity. She has lost her last piece of leverage against her son, and she has created a monster who has now learned the lessons of the poisoned mushroom all too well. After the death of Britannicus, the war accelerates. All pretense of affection is gone. Nero now moves to systematically dismantle his mother's remaining power. First, he targets her dignitas, her public standing. He strips her of her personal bodyguard, the contingent of Roman soldiers and loyal German mercenaries who had been a visible symbol of her status. Suddenly, the Augusta, the mother of the emperor, is left unprotected, a clear signal to all of Rome that her influence is at an end. The crowds of clients who once flocked to her morning receptions now dwindle to a handful of brave loyalists. Then comes the ultimate humiliation. You watch one afternoon as a detachment of guards arrives at her opulent suite in the imperial palace. Nero has ordered her to leave. She is expelled from the home that had been the center of her universe, the seat of her power for a decade. You see the sad, quiet procession as her personal effects are loaded onto carts. The Augusta is forced to move into a private mansion that had once belonged to her grandmother, a beautiful home, but a political prison. The cruelty does not end there. Nero begins a campaign of psychological torment. He encourages accusers to launch frivolous lawsuits against her, forcing her to constantly defend herself in court. He pays local troublemakers to shout insults at her when she leaves her home. He even makes surprise visits himself, his guards sweeping through her villa, pretending to search for conspiracies, their true purpose only to unsettle her and remind her who is in control. You see her now, no longer the co-ruler of the world, but an isolated woman. She is a shadow of her former self, but the fire of her ambition is not yet extinguished. It has merely been banked, waiting for a draught of air, a moment of opportunity. The cracks in the golden facade have become a chasm, separating mother from son, creator from creation. It is a terrible thing to watch a creator be destroyed by her own creation. The boy she had placed upon the throne had learned his lessons in power and ruthlessness far better than she could have ever imagined. You are with Agrippina in her splendid isolation, a queen confined to a private villa when the unexpected happens. A letter arrives bearing the seal of the emperor, her son. You watch her break the wax, her expression guarded. But as she reads the words written within, you see the hardness in her eyes begin to soften. The letter is a masterpiece of contrition. Nero writes of his regret, of his boyish anger, and of his deep, abiding love for his mother. He begs for a reconciliation. He invites her to join him at his seaside villa in Baiae on the glittering Bay of Naples to celebrate the annual festival of the Quinquatrus. It is a festival dedicated to Minerva, the goddess of wisdom. A light smile of irony touches your thoughts at the choice of occasion. Is it a trap? Her mind, honed by decades of intrigue, must be screaming that it is. But her heart, the heart of a mother who has, above all else, loved her son, wants to believe. After years of Cold War, this is the truce she has been praying for. She accepts. You travel with her entourage to Baiae, the ancient world's most luxurious resort. The air is warm and smells of salt and citrus groves. Opulent villas, gleaming white in the Italian sun, cling to the hillsides overlooking a bay of the most breathtaking blue. This is the playground of Rome's elite, a place of feasting, sailing, and scandalous affairs. The festive atmosphere is infectious, and it seems to soothe Agrippina's remaining fears. This is a place for pleasure, not for plots. That evening, you are a guest at Nero's banquet. The scene is one of extravagant welcome. Torches flicker, music plays, and the air is filled with laughter. And at the center of it all is a tableau of perfect family harmony. Nero plays the part of the adoring son to perfection. He seats his mother in the place of highest honor. He defers to her, hangs on her every word, and engages her in long private conversations, his eyes full of the warmth she has so desperately missed. You watch her begin to thaw under the heat of his affection. The calculating Augusta recedes, and the proud mother emerges. She is radiant, confident again. For a few precious hours, it is as if the last few bitter years had never happened. The feast lasts late into the night. As the guests begin to depart, Nero, feigning concern, insists on walking his mother down to the pier himself. The sea is a sheet of black glass, reflecting a brilliant canopy of stars. He gestures to a waiting vessel. "Your own ship was damaged in a squall," he says with a gentle smile. "Please, allow me to offer you this one for your return journey. It is a small gift. The boat is magnificent, newly built and ornately decorated, looking every bit the lavish imperial transport. It floats placidly at the dock." As Agrippina prepares to board, Nero embraces her. He holds her for a long time, kissing her on the eyes and hands, his voice thick with emotion, as he wishes her a safe journey and good health. It is an almost theatrical display of filial love, and it is the last time she will ever feel her son's touch. You are on the vessel with her as it pushes off from the shore. The night is perfectly calm, the air still and warm. Oars dip into the water with a quiet, rhythmic splash. Agrippina is in high spirits, reclining on a couch in the main cabin, chatting happily with her trusted attendant, Acerronia. She talks about her son, about how this reconciliation proves that the bond between a mother and child is truly unbreakable. The boat glides further out into the bay, heading for a stretch of open water between Baiae and Agrippina's own villa. Then, it happens. A sudden terrible sound shatters the tranquility of the night. A deep, groaning crack of tortured timber directly overhead. The heavy, lead-lined canopy of the cabin, which had been engineered to collapse, gives way and plummets downwards. It crashes onto the couch with the force of a battering ram. One of Agrippina's attendants is crushed instantly, but fate, or perhaps just shoddy workmanship, intervenes. The sturdy, high-backed couch she and Acerronia are on does not completely splinter. Its strong frame takes the brunt of the weight, protecting them from the fatal blow. Almost immediately, a second mechanism is triggered. The boat itself, designed to break apart and sink, begins to founder. Seams open up and cold seawater rushes in. The crew, all part of the conspiracy, begin to panic on purpose, shouting and running, accidentally thwarting the efforts of Agrippina's few loyal men. In the chaos and the darkness, Acerronia, believing the incident to be a genuine accident, makes a fatal mistake. "Help!" she screams into the night. "I am Agrippina. Save the emperor's mother." Her cry is a death sentence. The assassins on the crew, hearing the name, converge on her position. In the dim moonlight, you see the dark shapes of oars and clubs rising and falling. A flurry of heavy blows, a choked cry, and then silence. In trying to save herself, she has inadvertently saved her mistress. For Agrippina, wounded in the shoulder but alive, has remained silent. She understands everything now. The warm letter, the loving feast, the special boat. As Acerronia's desperate cry draws the attention of the killers, she slips over the side, unnoticed, into the black water. The discipline forged on Pandateria takes over. Despite her injury, she begins to swim, quietly and steadily, away from the wreckage. Soon, small fishing boats, their occupants drawn by the commotion, begin to arrive. They pull a handful of survivors from the water, including the silent, shivering Empress. They have no idea who they have just saved. They deliver her to the docks of her own lakeside villa. You see her there, wrapped in blankets, her wound being tended to. Her body is trembling from the cold and the shock, but her mind is a shard of ice. She is no longer a hopeful mother. She is a survivor. How many times must she have relived that sound? The groan of dying wood, the symphony of her own murder. She has survived the attempt, but now she is faced with an even more terrifying challenge. Surviving the knowledge of what her son has become and what he will do next. You are there in the seaside villa, the air thick with the smell of salt and medicinal herbs. Agrippina lies on a couch, her shoulder bandaged, her body racked with shivers from the cold sea. But her mind is a beacon of blistering clarity. The fog of shock has burned away, leaving behind the terrifying, unassailable truth. Her son, her Nero, had tried to murder her. The loving reconciliation, the feast, the beautiful boat, it was all an elaborate stage for her own execution. Her attendants are frantic, some weeping, others chattering with fear, but Agrippina silences them with a single sharp gesture. Panic is a luxury she cannot afford. She knows that as soon as word of her survival reaches Nero, he will send another wave of killers. She has to control the narrative, if only for a few more hours. With a calmness that seems almost superhuman, she summons her most trusted freedman, a man named Agrippinus. You listen as she dictates a message to be taken to her son. The message is a work of breathtaking audacity. She instructs Agrippinus to tell Nero that by the miraculous intervention of the gods, she has survived a most unfortunate accident. Tell him, she insists, that she is wounded but resting, and she makes one final, crucial point. Tell the emperor that he must not visit. His mother's recovery, she says, requires absolute quiet. It is a masterstroke of psychological warfare. She is pretending she suspects nothing, daring him to make the next move, and in doing so, she seizes a sliver of control in a situation where she has none. The scene shifts. You are now a ghostly presence in Nero's own villa down the coast. When the news arrives that his mother is alive, his carefully constructed composure evaporates. You see him pacing, his face pale with sweat, a picture of pure terror. The boy who faced down the Senate is gone, replaced by a panicked child who has failed at the most important test of his life. He imagines his mother, a figure of righteous fury, appearing before the Senate, revealing the collapsible boat, showing her wounds to the legions. He sees his power, his very life, crumbling to dust. His advisors, Seneca and Burrus, are summoned. They arrive to find their emperor in a state of near collapse. They too are shaken. They are now accomplices in a bungled assassination plot against the emperor's mother. Their fates are tied to his. As they debate what to do, Agerinus, Agrippina's messenger, is announced. The arrival of the freedman presents them with a desperate opportunity. As Agerinus earnestly delivers his mistress's message, you watch Nero perform the most cynical act of his life. He lets a sword clatter to the floor between himself and the messenger. He then cries out, his voice filled with feigned terror, that he has caught an assassin, that his own mother had sent her servant to finish the job the sea could not. It is a grotesque, transparent lie, but it is the pretext they need. Agerinus is dragged away in chains. Nero is no longer the aggressor. He is the intended victim. He now has the justification he needs to act openly. The order is given. Anicetus, the commander of the local fleet and the architect of the failed boat, is summoned. He, along with a marine captain and a centurion, are given their final, explicit command. Go to the villa of Agrippina. Finish what was started. Back in her villa, an agonizing vigil has begun. The hours crawl by. The fact that her messenger has not returned is all the answer Agrippina needs. The crowd of local townspeople who had gathered outside her gates to cheer her survival have sensed the shift in the political winds and have melted away into the night. The villa is now ominously silent. You are with her in her bedchamber. The only light comes from a single flickering oil lamp, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Her last loyal attendant stands weeping softly in the corner, but Agrippina is calm. She has lived her entire life on a knife's edge. She faced exile on a barren rock and returned. She faced down the Praetorian Guard and won. She will face this too, with the dignitas of a true Roman noble. She is preparing for her bonamors, her good death. Then you hear it. The crunch of gravel outside, followed by the heavy, rhythmic tramp of military sandals. The main door of the villa splinters open. You hear shouting. The last of her servants scream and flee. Her attendant rushes to the door, but Agrippina's voice, low and steady, stops her. "Are you two going to desert me?" she asks, not with pity, but with a kind of weary irony. The attendant freezes, then stays. The three assassins burst into the room, their swords drawn. Anicetus, the man whose engineering failure had given her these few extra hours of life, stands at the foot of her bed. For a long, silent moment, they simply stare at the woman they have been sent to kill. She is propped up on her elbow, her gaze meeting theirs without a flicker of fear. Anicetus raises his club and brings it down hard on her head. It is a brutal, stunning blow, but she does not cry out. As the other two men draw their swords and advance, she knows the end has come. The dark prophecy an astrologer made so long ago is about to be fulfilled. She pulls her robes aside, exposing her stomach. She looks directly into the eyes of her killer, and with her final breath, she gives her last command. "Strike the womb," she says, her voice clear and steady. Some accounts say she simply uttered, "Ventrum ferri," strike the belly. It is her final devastating act of defiance. It is not a plea for mercy, but a curse. A horrifying eternal indictment of the son she brought into the world, the son she loved, the son she placed on the throne, and the son who was now murdering her. In the end, did she see the face of the son she adored, or the monster she had created? The answer was now to be written in her own blood. The sound of the fatal blow echoes and then fades, leaving behind a silence in the bedchamber that is deeper and more profound than any you have ever known. The assassins, their work finally done, retreat into the darkness from whence they came. You remain, a silent witness in the still, lamplit room, beside the body of the woman who had, for a time, ruled the world. The prophecy she embraced on a storm-tossed island has found its brutal fulfillment. The son she made an emperor has, in turn, made her a ghost. Later, when the dawn breaks over the Bay of Naples, Nero comes. You watch as he enters the room and looks upon the lifeless form of his mother. There are no tears. There is no cry of anguish or remorse. Instead, you observe a chilling, clinical detachment. He comments on the features of her body, critiquing her form as a connoisseur might appraise a statue. In this cold, unnerving moment, you see the final, terrible truth. The son she had loved, the boy she had moulded, is gone, and only the monster remains. Her funeral is a quiet, hurried affair, a final, posthumous humiliation. This is not the grand state ceremony befitting an Augusta, the daughter of Germanicus. There is no procession through the forum, no laudatory eulogy, no weeping crowds. She is cremated at night on a common dining couch, and her ashes are interred in a modest tomb nearby. It is a burial shrouded in shame, designed to erase her from memory as quickly and quietly as possible. This, you realize, is the Roman custom for the disgraced, and her son has made sure she is counted among them. Back in Rome, the sycophantic Senate, ever eager to please the reigning power, does not mourn her passing. Instead, they vote to hold public thanksgivings to the gods. They offer congratulations to Nero for his safe escape from his mother's plots. Statues are erected to celebrate his salvation. The truth of the murder is an open secret that everyone has silently agreed to treat as a lie. Nero has killed his mother, but you soon learn that he cannot escape her. Her ghost becomes the most powerful figure in his life. You see him in the palace late at night, his face pale, starting at shadows. You hear the whispers from his closest attendants that he is plagued by terrible nightmares. They say he sees her spectre constantly, her face contorted in fury, her spectral wounds weeping, flanked by the torch-bearing furies of myth. He complains of hearing the mournful sound of a trumpet, seeming to emanate from the hill where her simple tomb lies. In his desperation, he even summons Persian magi, priests, who claim to be able to communicate with the dead. You can picture the scene, the darkened room, the arcane rituals, the frantic emperor trying to conjure the spirit of the mother he murdered, perhaps to beg for the forgiveness he knows he will never receive. But the rituals fail. Her ghost cannot be placated. The Optima Mater has become his personal tormentor, a constant, invisible presence at his side. He has gained the whole world, but he is now and forever haunted. And so, you are left to reflect on her legacy, on the brilliant, terrifying, and tragic arc of her life. You remember her as a young girl, learning the brutal rules of survival in Caligula's treacherous court. You see her on the stark cliffs of Pandateria, her ambition forged into a single sharp point in the fires of exile. You recall the sheer audacity of her return, her marriage to her own uncle, her methodical ascent to become Augusta. You see her weaving her web of power, not for herself, but for the son who was her life's great project. Was she a monster of ambition, a woman so hungry for power that she would seduce her own son and murder her husband? Or was she the ultimate protective mother, a lioness who used the only weapons available to a woman in her world, intrigue, charm, and ruthlessness, to secure a future for her child in a system designed to destroy them both? The men who built Rome were all ambitious. They all schemed, fought, and killed. Perhaps her greatest crime, in the eyes of her contemporaries, was not her ambition, but the fact that she was a woman who dared to wield it as effectively as any man. Perhaps, in the end, she was simply a Roman, a product of a magnificent and merciless world. Her story is a testament to the idea that power is a ghost that haunts its owner. She gained it, and it turned her son against her. He seized it from her, and her memory drove him mad. You look back one last time, seeing her not as a villain or a saint, but as a figure of towering complexity, a woman of formidable intellect and unbreakable will who flew too close to the sun and was consumed not by its heat, but by the fire she had created herself. And so, the story of Agrippina, the empress who clawed her way back from nothing only to be destroyed by everything she had ever wanted, finally fades back into the whispering galleries of history. The great drama of her life is over, the sound and the fury now quiet, leaving only the soft, gentle rustle of the passing centuries which have smoothed the sharp edges of her tale into a legend for sleep. Let the weight of her ambition drift away from you now, as the last flickering torch in the corridors of the palace is extinguished and the cool, silent darkness of the Roman night settles in. The marble floors are still, the ghosts are at peace, and the whispers have faded into a deep and profound slumber. Let your own thoughts drift and soften, carrying you gently away from these ancient sorrows and into the calm, quiet space of your own peaceful dreams. The story is told. Now, it is time for rest.